In the final months of the year 1789, when the Atlantic winds chilled the bones of sailors and the world seemed caught between old superstition and new revolution, there stood a small fishing settlement along the northeastern American coast known as Blackwater Harbor. The harbor earned its name from the dark, almost ink-colored waters that pooled between its rocky cliffs, waters that locals avoided at night and even travelers whispered about with unease. The settlement held fewer than 200 souls, most of whom survived on fishing, ship repair, or the small trade that passed through their lonely docks. From a distance, Blackwater Harbor seemed peaceful, smoke curling from chimneys, fishing nets drying on poles, lanterns glowing softly along its narrow wooden piers. But to live there was to know that the harbor carried secrets older than the colonies themselves. The story begins on a night when a ghostly fog rolled in from the Atlantic, swallowing the coastline. On such nights, the lanterns that lined the harbor were lit early. 16 iron poles, each topped with a hand-blown glass lantern meant to guide incoming ships. The lanterns were the pride of the harbor, installed after a disastrous shipwreck 15 years earlier. Every evening they burned until dawn. But on that night, October 17th, 1789, just after the church bell struck midnight, all 16 lanterns vanished. Not extinguished, not shattered, not stolen. Gone. Poles bare. Glass missing. The night watchman swore he heard no footsteps, no wagon, no clatter of iron or glass. Only a low humming sound drifting over the black water, fading just before the lights disappeared. The harbor awoke to panic. The first to notice was Abigail Crow, a widow who lived in a loft above the bait shop. She stepped out to toss wash water into the alley when she saw the poles standing naked in the fog like skeletal fingers. She screamed, waking the entire settlement. Within an hour, men with lanterns of their own stormed the docks. Harbor Master Jonas Watts, Reverend Silas Harrow, and an aging former privateer named Captain Elijah Boone, who had seen more curses and weathered more storms than any man alive. "What devilry is this?" Jonas muttered, kneeling to inspect one of the poles. Captain Boone simply stared at the water, jaw tight. "It's begun again," he whispered. Those nearby froze. "Again?" Jonas asked. Boone said nothing. Rumors spread fast. Some blamed thieves from the mainland, though none could explain how anyone could sneak off with 16 heavy glass lanterns without a sound. Others blamed the weather, but fog had never carried away iron before. The more superstitious talked of the old Blackwater stories, legends whispered since the time of the first explorers, tales of glowing lights deep beneath the water, and shadowy figures who walked on the waves. By noon, the settlement gathered in the church hall. Reverend Harrow, tall and thin as a steeple beam, raised his hands. "No lantern disappears without reason," he said, "and no reason comes without a cost. We must uncover the truth before darkness falls." But only Captain Boone spoke with certainty. "This is the same omen the harbor saw in 74, he declared. "The night before the storm that swallowed the brig Mercy's Pride." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the story of Mercy's Pride, a cargo ship that vanished without a trace right off the coast, not even a plank ever recovered. The lanterns had flickered wildly the night before the storm, as if ripped from their hooks by invisible hands. People remembered, and fear returned like a shadow pulling over the room. Before the meeting could continue, a boy burst through the doors, breathless, shaking, eyes wide with terror. It was Elias Barrett, son of the blacksmith. "They're back!" he cried. "The lanterns! They're floating in the water!" The entire hall emptied at once. Down at the shoreline, people gasped. There, drifting in the inky tide, the missing lanterns bobbed like silent glowing orbs. Except they weren't lit. They reflected no sunlight. They simply existed, perfectly still, moving in unison as though controlled by something beneath them. Jonas knelt. "There's no rope, no hands, no trick." Abigail whispered, "Why are they floating like that?" Captain Boone moved closer, slow, cautious. "They're waiting." "Waiting for what?" Jonas asked. Before Boone could answer, a soft sound rose from the deep, low, resonant, almost like a choir humming beneath the waves. The floating lanterns began to drift backward, drawn toward the open sea. Then, one by one, they sank. No bubbles, no splash, just silence. By nightfall, the harbor was engulfed in panic. Without the lanterns, the docks were pitch black, swallowed by fog thick enough to choke a breath. Fishermen refused to sail, children refused to sleep. And at the heart of the harbor, where the water was darkest, a faint, unnatural glow began to shimmer beneath the surface. Reverend Harrow insisted it was phosphorescent algae. Captain Boone whispered another word. Warning. The next morning, a stranger arrived. He came by horseback, cloaked in dark wool, traveling alone. He introduced himself as Dr. Nathaniel Braddock, a natural philosopher from Providence. He had heard rumors of unusual phenomena along the coast and sought first-hand observation. Braddock was calm, educated, rational, exactly what Blackwater Harbor believed they needed. But the more he investigated, the stranger things became. He examined the docks. He questioned the night watchman. He visited the cliffs overlooking the harbor. On the second evening, he stood with Captain Boone on the rocks. "What do you think it is?" Boone asked him. "A storm? An animal? Something else?" Braddock paused. "I think," he said carefully, "that this harbor has a history no one has written down, and something old is resurfacing." That night, as the town attempted sleep, Braddock stayed awake, notebook in hand, watching the dark water. At exactly 2:11 a.m., the glowing returned, stronger, pulsating, swirling like a whirlpool of light. Then he saw them. Figures. Shadow-like. Walking across the surface of the water as though it were solid ground. He froze, breath caught in his throat. There were 8 of them, tall, thin, silhouettes outlined by the faint glow beneath their feet. They carried no lanterns. Instead, each held a thin, rod-like staff that tipped with a pale blue flame. Braddock blinked. The shapes dissolved into fog. The next morning, he reported what he saw. Some laughed. Some prayed. Captain Boone only nodded. "Aye," Boone said. "Them's the Watchers," Abigail gasped. "The old legends?" Boone nodded slowly. "Aye, the ones the Algonquins spoke of centuries before we built our first pier. Spirits who guard what lies beneath. When they appear, something buried is ready to rise." That day, Dr. Braddock and Boone decided to take a boat out into the center of the harbor, despite every villager warning them not to. The water was calm, too calm, like glass. No birds called. No fish swam beneath the boat. Halfway across the harbor, Braddock noticed the water darkening. Not naturally, unnaturally, as though a shadow was rising from the deep. He leaned over the side and saw the lanterns, all 16, resting perfectly arranged on the ocean floor like a ring around a central stone slab carved with symbols he did not recognize. "What is that?" Braddock whispered. Boone's face was pale. "I hoped I'd never see it again." The slab vibrated. The water began to boil, and suddenly the boat lurched violently, almost capsizing. A column of glowing water shot upward, white-blue light illuminating the harbor like lightning. Braddock grabbed the oars. "Row!" But Boone didn't move. He stared, transfixed, at the glowing slab beneath them. "The Watchers are awakening," he whispered. The light faded. The water calmed. But the harbor was changed. Even the air felt different, charged with electricity. Over the next 3 nights, the glowing beneath the harbor intensified, flares of light rising from the deep like underwater storms. Villagers gathered on the cliffs with fear in their eyes. On the 4th night, it happened. The lanterns rose from the water, not floating this time, hovering, suspended in the air like stars ripped from the sky. Then they drifted toward the shore, slow, deliberate, gathering around the old church on the hill. The building shook, windows rattled. The bell rang without wind, and inside the church the floorboards began to split. Reverend Harrow knelt, praying frantically. Abigail fled toward the cemetery, screaming that the dead were waking. Jonas called for order, but none could explain what happened next. The lanterns dropped to the ground outside the church, shattering in perfect synchrony. The glow ceased. The harbor fell silent. Everything stopped. Then, in the stillness, a sound rose from the cracks in the church floor. A heartbeat, slow, heavy, ancient. Dr. Braddock pushed through the crowd. "Something is beneath us, something buried." Captain Boone shuddered. Not something. Someone. At dawn, Braddock, Boone, Jonas, and a handful of brave villagers entered the church. They pried up the floorboards. Underneath, instead of earth, they found stone, a circular platform carved with intricate spirals. The same symbols Braddock had seen underwater. Carved along the edge were words written in an archaic form of English. "When the light returns, so shall the first voyager." Braddock frowned. The first voyager? Who? Before he could finish, the stone shifted. A seam split down the center. Dust rose, and a chamber began to open. An underground vault, hidden since before the first settlers arrived. Inside they found a body, or what appeared to be one, preserved perfectly, as though the man had died yesterday. He wore clothing unfamiliar to all of them, neither colonial nor European. He held a staff tipped with a pale blue flame. Reverend Harrow gasped. "One of the Watchers?" "No," Braddock whispered. "A leader of them." When they touched the staff, the blue flame flickered to life. The room lit with soft, unnatural light, and the man's eyes opened. The villagers screamed, stumbling backward, some fleeing the church. But the man did not rise. He only stared, unmoving, eyes glowing faintly. Then, with a voice deeper than the ocean, he spoke words none understood. The light from his staff intensified, and before anyone could react, the entire chamber collapsed inward. The stone platform sealed shut. The cracks healed as though they had never been. Everything returned to normal. The staff was gone. The body was gone. The man was gone. And the lanterns that had shattered outside the church lay perfectly whole once more, silent, ordinary, lifeless. The villagers stood speechless. Dr. Braddock finally said what they all feared. It wasn't a curse or a warning. It was a summoning. The harbor called him back, and now that he has returned to where he belongs, the lights no longer fight us. Captain Boone nodded. The Watchers protect something, and that something is beneath this harbor. Always has been. Jonas wiped his brow. Are we safe? Boone stared out at the dark water. For now. In the weeks that followed, the lanterns behaved normally again. No more glowing. No more floating. No more lights beneath the water. Seasonal storms passed harmlessly. The fish returned. Birds circled the harbor once more. Life continued. But Dr. Braddock, before leaving, gave one final warning. If the lanterns ever vanish again, do not attempt to interfere. Whatever sleeps beneath Blackwater Harbor does not want to be disturbed. He paused, then added softly, and next time, it may not go back to sleep. To this day, more than 2 centuries later, Blackwater Harbor remains a quiet, forgotten corner of the coast. Many of its original docks have rotted away. Most of the old homes are gone. But the church still stands. The pier still holds 16 lantern poles. And on certain nights, when the fog rolls in thick and the water turns black as tar, locals swear they see faint blue lights flickering beneath the waves, waiting, watching, and listening for the moment when the lanterns of Blackwater Harbor vanish once more.